Hey, hello everyone. Um, to indicate that you can hear us, there's a chat button. And so you can just say hello or whatever on the chat button, because otherwise it's like speaking into a void, because it's a shame we can't all join in and participate. So hello everyone. We're going to start.
We've got a bunch of hellos and highs already.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of chat I like. So this is part of the Summer of Law series. Some of you might have been to the one last week. This one is called Law in Action, and we're going to try and tell you a bit about the Kent Law Clinic and who we are. And we hope that you will be so impressed that you'll come, and more importantly, that you'll get involved with the Law Clinic if you come to Kent. And so I should introduce myself and say, my name's Graham. Graham Tegg. I'm a solicitor. I'm also the director of the Law Clinic, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
I'll go next. I'm Vivian Gambling, also known as Viv, and I'm one of the solicitors in the Law Clinic, and I do housing work mainly.
I'm Meg. I'm one of the clinic coordinators, and I was a previous student at the university, and I did the new end law course.
And my name's Lauren. I am a senior status student, and I just finished my degree, and I was a volunteer with the clinic for the past 2 years.
So that's our introductions. And so I think I'm going to hand over to Viv to talk a bit about what the Law Clinic is with some slides.
Great, thanks, Graham. Well, I'll just give a brief explanation of the Law Clinic. So we just flashed past my favourite photo of the Law Clinic building. This is where we are situated on the ground floor of building the Wigan Law Building on the campus at the University of Kent. And then just to explain who we are and what we do, if we move to the next slide here, there's a photograph of some of us. Yes, I'm on the photograph somewhere in the middle. Graham is on the photograph, and our colleagues, other lawyers in the Law Clinic. And we're part of the Kent Law School, and what we do is we work on real life cases to help members of the public with their legal problems. And we do that for members of the public who are facing real legal issues and people who can't afford to pay for legal services privately. So we provide this public service. And the other aspect of the Law Clinic is that we're based in the university. We're there for the benefit of students, and students work hand in hand with the clinic lawyers as a team to learn about the law and to experience the law in action. So you might be asking, well, what areas of law do we do? And when we were thinking about this, and we just had a bit of a brainstorm and thought, well, what are all the things that we do in the Law Clinic? And they're multi-faceted and a whole variety of things. And so this was just a word cloud that was produced when we kind of just did as I say, a brainstorm of all the different aspects of the Law Clinic. But just to give you a slightly more detailed idea of what we do, we deal with a huge number of inquiries from members of the public throughout the year. And we counted them up for what we did last year. So it's 1,200 inquiries over the course of the year from members of the public. And that could be on a whole range of different matters. So each inquiry is different. It's a unique problem with its own particular set of facts. So it could be about anything. And what we try to do, because there are few places that people can go to get free legal advice, and so we try to provide advice in as many cases as we can. And so when we're doing this, our task is to try and work out, what the problem is and what we need to know. and what advice we can give to that client. We provide, we can't take on every case. We can't do 1,200 cases a year. And this slide shows the main areas that we focus on of the cases that we take on as cases, meaning not just advice, but full representation for clients if they need to go to court or to a tribunal. And these areas of law, housing, family, welfare benefits, immigration, and civil litigation, they tend to be the kind of areas that where people who don't have a lot of money, the kind of people that we help, that have problems in these areas, and sometimes they have problems that overlap, you know, more than one problem, and problems that sort of are related. And so these are the main areas that that we cover. So just to give you a little more of a flavour, I'm going to invite Meg now to talk about one of the cases that she has dealt with, which was a welfare benefits case. And it's a subject which is very much in the news. If you've been paying attention to the news and what's been going on in Parliament recently, the area of welfare benefits. So Meg, would you like to tell us about the case that you dealt with?
Absolutely. As they've already said, one of the cases that I did as a student was a welfare benefits case. More specifically, it was PIP. On this slide, you can see a little bit about what PIP is, but it's to do with disabilities. And the case that I did involved client X, who was a 60-year-old male with a long list of disabilities, including epilepsy, arthritis, depression, and the list goes on. And he came to us after his PIP was refused. He was previously in receipt of PIP and he made an application. They refused it. He asked the DWP to reconsider their decision and they refused him yet again, which is when he came to us for advice and representation, which is when we assisted him. This process involved, it was a very strenuous process and involved a lot of work. And as you can see, hopefully on the next slide, the law is complicated and there's a lot to it. Don't be alarmed by the information that is on the slide. You don't have to read it. It's just to show you how complicated it is. And the evidence that we need to look at was a big bundle of documents, nearly 400 pages long, that included medical records, previous PIP decisions, and photographic evidence of the medical equipment that he had, and a video. As well as that, I had to hold an interview with him just to get more information from him to be able to create submissions so that he can make an application to the court and present it before a judge so the DWP can reconsider their decision and he can appeal it. And in order for this, we needed to draft submissions based on the descriptors to prove that he was entitled to this benefit. And the interview process was really long. And when we were drafting the submissions and submitted them to the court, when I was at the tribunal, the judge said that I had read the submissions and it is very clear that this person should be entitled to this benefit. And he was granted both parts of the benefit, which is daily living and mobility at an enhanced rate, which is the highest you can get. And he was also granted that benefit indefinitely, which means that he doesn't have to go back to court to go through this strenuous process. And it was very rewarding to be a part of this and to be able to help someone like him. And just to put it in perspective, how much it impacts them, the amount of money that he does get each week is £180 roughly, which is £800 a month and nearly £10,000 a year. And that's a lot of money for someone who didn't have anything before. And if this is something that you would be interested in and would like to get involved, I will talk about that later on. And Lauren, do you want to talk about one of the cases that you've done?
Yeah, thanks, Meg. So I was able to work on a few cases with different solicitors at the Law Clinic. But one that I was able to work on with Graham involves 3 different areas of law, which I think is a really important illustrative example of the work that the clinic does, because oftentimes people have really complex lives and they experience a lot of challenges, and sometimes you might be working with somebody who's going through one of the most difficult times in their lives, and that can be a really important reason why it's so important to be involved with the clinic, because it helps us learn how to work with people during these difficult times. So in my case, it was a woman who had immigrated to the UK and with her spouse, but they had been separated, and so there was issues around some gender-based violence, but her questions revolved around benefits, immigration, and housing. One of the really great things that happened when Graham and I were able to sit down with them was to be able to help her understand really clearly what benefits she was entitled to, and to also help her understand how to access information about it. So sometimes when we get cases that come into the clinic, there are steps that we can take to help clients sort of resolve their issues, or be able to give them that information a little bit faster, or may not involve going through the courts necessarily. And so we were able to help her understand the information that she was provided, as well as help her understand a bit more about the benefits that she was going to get and how much they were worth. So that was really helpful and great that we were able to achieve that. And then we helped her work through a few different questions about potential visa options that she needed to have for immigration status and how she could navigate them, as well as how some of these decisions would impact her housing, and to be able to provide a few different options for them to consider and to work through. And part of the work that I did with Graham on that was we met with them and had quite a long conversation. We got a lot of additional information about the case to help us understand some of the complexities and how we could help them work through those. And then afterwards, I got to draft a letter for the client, and I worked with Graham and another solicitor at the clinic to be able to work through some of those different pieces and how they could all fit together. But it just kind of goes to show that people's lives are really complicated. Sometimes there often aren't just single issue clients that come in, but also that sometimes we can help them resolve one issue almost right away, and then be able to help them work through some of the other ones over time. And I think that's a really great reason to be involved with the clinic, because it's very illustrative of, you know, our everyday lives. We're all complicated people with complicated problems sometimes, but, you know, we can be solutions oriented and really help people move through them. And hopefully that helps them, you know, in the long run. So I think if we go to the next slide, we're actually going to do an inquiry now. Awesome.
So we've spoken at you, and I think both Meg and Lauren, it illustrates the difference that it makes and the rewarding aspect of doing it as a student, but also it impacts people's lives. And so in Meg's case, there was somebody where all the way through, the opponent, the Department for Work and Pensions, insisted they were correct. The person got nothing. But what Meg did with advice and support from the solicitors to say, not only are you wrong, they should get the maximum amount and get it forever. So enough of this. Let's actually, this is called law in action. So I want you to help us to deal with a real inquiry. And so this means that the chat function is there for you to use. So ask questions, come with suggestions. And so let's move on to a real inquiry.
Okay. So this is an example of one of our inquiry sheets.
Yes, I think, Lauren, this one will be illegible. So it's just
Yes.
to illustrate sort of how, what things look like when a client fills in their initial inquiry. So all the cases we deal with start from here, and then we're looking at the details and trying to make sense of it. So I think the next slide will show us the key information. So this is the key thing.
Okay, thanks, Viv. Yeah, so as Viv mentioned on the last slide, yeah, that's normally like what people will fill in, and sometimes people will, like volunteers at the clinic or the solicitors or Meg will call the clients and get additional information. So this is what we've got for this one. they've said, I just need some advice. We got married 4 weeks. The entire day was a disaster. Our wedding organizer left, leaving no one running the wedding. The timings went out the window and everything was late. The main food they brought out was inedible. The dessert was different to what we had chosen. Food cost was £6,000. They even threw away half our wedding cake during the day, and the cake cost £240. They upgraded our wine and charged us £36 without asking. The staff lost my phone, meaning no playlists. I spent hours on making playlists and none were played. Our contract stated we would have a designated wedding organizer and toast manager during the day, and when one left, they were never replaced. All they have offered us is a 5-day stay and compensation. I just need to know if I have a case that's worth pursuing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lauren. Now, I've got a small problem here, which is my screen is frozen and I have no extra information or any of the slides. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get Meg to play a slide with some music, and I'm going to quickly, as quick as I can go, get to another computer. So this is Law in Action or Mistakes in Action. I'll see you in a few seconds. Music, please. Play the tune again.
I can't keep my microphone on.
What?
I can't do it.
That's all right. It's all right.
Okay. Sure thing. You can't.
I'm going to share.
Okay. The audio is on, by the way.
Can they see me?
Yes, they can, and they can hear you.
Hey. Hello.
Okay.
That wasn't planned. Anyway, you've probably forgotten what the inquiry is now. So can we put the actual text of the inquiry back up for a second? So this is a genuine inquiry. We got it in the middle of June. And after we finish doing this, I'm going to try and advise her and find out some more information. And so in the clinic, we like law, but we are really interested in facts. It's quite often the facts. And so these are the facts that we know. And so this is how we deal with inquiries. And so we look at what we've got. What do we know? What are the facts given? And also, what don't we know? And then what does the client want? And what further information, what further evidence that we need? And so if we can go back to the inquiry, and this is, you really do need to get involved in the chat, because I'm going to ask you to tell us, what do we know from these facts? If someone can be brave enough to have a go first. So one comment says they signed a contract. I think that's true. What else do we know? We know that it wasn't the contract we're told is that it wasn't met to their full expectations.
They're not happy with the service provided, and they have been charged more than they agreed. The organisers basically abandoned them despite being bound on the contract.
Anything else that we know? This is really kind of basic stuff, It's like, how many can people tell me all the things, suggestions of all the things that went wrong according to what she said?
They lost money.
What happened? What did she say happened?
So I think what you're asking for is people to concentrate on the detail of the facts.
Exactly.
Exactly. So we need, yeah, we need the detail, don't we? So the dessert was different. They lost £250. What else do we have? Yeah, gosh, the chat is moving so fast. It's hard to read. Charged additional £36, which was, I think, for the wine.
Everything was late. The food was inedible rather than inevitable. The staff lost the phone. Come on, there were no playlists. At wedding, no playlists. Not your at wedding, don't you have your first song, the big dance? They couldn't have it. Exactly. The organizer left and wasn't replaced.
Yeah, leaving the event totally unorganized.
So those. So at the moment, I know she hasn't been compensated because that's what she wants. I don't think she doesn't believe, does she, that 5 days stay at the place is fair recompense for what's happened. And so those are the facts that we know, I think. And so I'm now going to say, what more do you want to know? Are there any documents you want to see? Like, what bits are missing about this?
Okay, so somebody said, I'd like to see the contract and the policy of the company to confirm that there aren't any fine print, small print.
Lawyer in the making.
Yeah, terms and conditions. Yeah, so quite a few people are saying, we want to see the contract. And there are a couple of smart contributions saying, yes, but we've only heard one side of the story, and we want to see the other side of the inquiry. So I presume that person's saying the same thing.
In terms of if she was in front of you now, and you had the chance to ask her questions as opposed to documents, like what more would you want to ask her? What more would you want to know, or do you think you know enough?
So what we've got is, again, we'd like to hear from the other side. Any photographic evidence, any CCTV? That's an interesting question. CCTV footage in order to find her phone. And yeah, bills for everything used at the wedding. Why did the person leave?
Good point.
Very good question. What else? Anything else? So basically people are sort of asking about evidence. What kind of evidence is there to support what we're being told?
I think I don't know what happened really. I would want to ask her who were the parties to the contract? Who was the payer? Do we know that? I might be an old fuddy-duddy traditionalist, but isn't it quite famous for parents, the fathers of the bride, to pay for the wedding? So they might well have been the person who entered into a contract. Did she have a whole series of different contracts? Was it one big package deal, or did she have a wedding organizer, somebody else meant to do something that was the catering supplied by the place? What did she discuss with them? Did she outline that someone told her this is what's going to happen for the day, and for this much money, this is what you're going to get? I always like to hear the human side of things, and I always think that I learn something. And so one of the things I never heard of before was a toast master. And so I looked it up on the internet, Google, and so I'm going to show you some pictures about what I learned. That person in the red is a Toastmaster, and it's quite a dangerous occupation, it seems to me, because you get hit on the head by somebody as a Toastmaster. And so to get you even more in the mood for doing this and what we're talking about is we're going to give you some poll questions, which I'd like you to respond to, if you could, because we're going to try set the scene with this. And so the first one is, how much is the wedding industry said to be worth to the UK in a year? And so you just choose one of these. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, just a bit of fun. So if you could choose one of these options, and then we can see what the people think.
Oh, damn, I was just about to vote and realised that I can't. I'm not allowed to.
I haven't worked out how you measure how people have voted. It's like a scam election. Here we
There
go.
you are. There you are.
Right. 5.2 million. Small number.
Yes, 8%.
800 billion, which is really quite a lot, isn't it?
So
is
12%.
12%.
Yeah, 12% of people.
48% went for 177 million. And is it 32%? 14 billion. The correct answer, according to the Wedding Industry Trade Association, is 14 billion pounds, which is a hell of a lot of money. And so, a small aside, difference between a million and a billion is huge. And so, in a million seconds, that's 11 days away. A billion seconds is 30 years away, just to illustrate that they are not comparable figures. So 14 billion pounds is a huge amount. I've got another question. Here's the next one. What is the cost of the average UK wedding?
Whoa, those are big figures. Some of them.
So again, so well done to anyone who guessed 14 billion pounds. I feel like Richard Dosman. How about this one?
Okay, we've got to give people a bit of a chance to scratch their heads, have a think.
I suffer from impatience.
We need the tune back, but okay, can you see the results have come in?
I can, yeah. I'm now looking at the screen, so it's an advantage. 10%, 75,000. 10%, 4,500. 50%, 25,000. And 30%, 37,000 pounds. The answer, and there's some discrepancy in this, but the average answer, or the three answers I looked at, the average came to 25,000 pounds, which strikes me as a lot of money. Can you say if you think that's a lot or not very much, but reasonable? I think it's a lot. While you're doing that, here's a third question. Reasonable.
Right, some people said reasonable, some people said for a wedding it's not that much.
Right, let's get back to the inquiry. And so we've discussed about the facts and what we know and what we don't know, and we know we want to see some documents. And so what area or areas of law are relevant to this inquiry? And so again, it's multiple choice. And so pick which one. Let's see what the result is.
Okay, so people could press more than one there, I guess.
I don't know. I haven't really done this very well, have I?
Good.
No, we got contract law, 100%. So everyone thought contract law was involved, and we got 50% say wedding law. Yeah, and tort or negligence 46%. So quite a few people thought that tort law was involved or negligence. And less on some on family and a few on human rights. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to say 100% of you were correct. It does involve contract law. The interesting thing, what I think is quite interesting, and when we come on to some law, is I don't think it's negligence, even though would people think they negligently, whoever was providing the wedding did it negligently. I honestly don't think it's human rights law. I can't think, even if you go the right to family life, it doesn't mean like a right to a great wedding. And it's not family law, even though it's about family. And so what I put these categories up, by the way, there's no such thing as wedding law. I really did just make that up. There's law relating to weddings. But when you come to study law, and this is one of the things we do in the clinic, is you look at the people's real lives and they don't fall into legal categories. And so one of the things that we do is to work out what's happened as best as we can, and then think, how does the law, how will the law manage to deal with this? And so I'm going to suggest that the law would deal with this via contract law and a contract dispute. And I'm also going to introduce a new piece of information or a new piece of law, which is that this will be backed up by a thing called the Consumer Rights Act 2015. And so has anyone ever heard of any of these things?
Graham, can I just pitch in? So a couple
Yeah.
of people have said on negligence, and these are interesting points. So would the loss of the phone, would that count as negligence and throwing away the cake?
I'm going to say no.
I'd
And
say
so
it's debatable, but
I'm going to
contract.
say this is why things are good, but more people join in because there's no reason to think I'm right. I think that negligence is if someone personally injured you, or you have to have like something that is a category of negligence. And so throwing away a phone, it could be another tort maybe, but it's not negligence because unless they could say that somebody offered to look after their phone and then just said, I just gave it away to someone. But apart from that, I don't see it.
Okay.
Throwing away the cake is just stupid, but it's not negligent.
Okay. So going back to your question, you mentioned the consumer rights.
Yeah.
So what was the question?
I think that the way that the law would try and deal with this is with a contract claim, and in the contract you would have the rights that are implied into any contract by the Consumer Rights Act. Do people want to say whether they have an idea of what I'm talking about or whether I need to explain it in more detail? I'm in your hands. What's the other poll question? Doesn't matter.
Don't know if it's going to open. Oh, on the
I'm
screen.
not sure there is another question, a poll question.
Okay.
There isn't one.
So with the Consumer Rights Act, what's the, just briefly, what are the duties to
Thanks
take?
for asking. Thanks for asking. The Consumer Rights Act there's a series of rights that are implied into consumer contracts, and sometimes it depends whether you're a business or whether you're an individual person. So these people are individuals who have contracted with a company, and so if someone says, I'm going to provide you with a service, they have to, it's implied into the contract, they will use reasonable care and diligence to provide you with a satisfactory service. And so that's the standard. And if you think that someone hasn't acted with reasonable care and diligence, and you've received a substandard service, then the result would be that you would say that they could have breached the contract. Here are my examples of all the breaches, and they're meant to have provided this to a reasonable standard. They haven't done, and so therefore that you would show that the other person, i.e., or other persons, are liable.
So I made a mistake. There is another question. So should we look at the question? Can you see that?
Yeah, because that's quite, because it's where would you go?
So what type of court? So do people want to have a go at that one? Okay, so 56% of people have said that the claim would be heard in the county court. 44% have said the magistrates court, and there's no votes, nul point for the High Court and the Crown Court.
This is excellent. So it would never go to the Crown Court because that's criminal. It wouldn't go to the magistrates because it's not kind of minor criminal or like state enforcement. It could, but it's an outside chance, end up in the High Court, but it would normally start in the county court. The reason why it might not, or it could get to the High Court, is if this was a preposterously expensive wedding, like Harry and Meghan, or a royal wedding, there's that sometimes if something's worth more than £125,000, it just is in the jurisdiction of the High Court, who then will send it back to a county court. But it will be going to a county court, which is the kind of thing that we do at the clinic, which is that somebody comes in, just imagine we found out about this, and so she's decided 5 days staying in that place is not helpful. I don't want that. I think that they should pay me money. And so therefore you'd have to, presumably they would say no. And so if the dispute couldn't be resolved, they would issue a claim. The claim would be in the county court, and then it would go through a court process. And so I was wondering, could we look at the next slide? So I think this is my cultural reference, is that you try, a wedding is meant to be the best day of your life, isn't it? That's what people say. It's meant to be fantastic, and it's all smiles like in the wedding planner. And it's like these idiots crash their wedding ready and ruin the whole thing. And so it was, rather than being a fantastic day with loads of fun and frivolity, it was a general disappointment. And so we go on to the next slide. And so I thought, to help us a bit, is that I did take the trouble of looking up the place they went to. And so I'm not breaching any confidentiality here. It was called Burley Hall, Burley Manor. So you can Google this if you want to. And this is what their brochure, this is the brochure. And Burley Manor says that's a dining room where the wrong food was brought out. Here's that's what it's meant to be, a big manor house with 2 people having a time of their lives. And so they say you can even have idiosyncratic wedding if you want. You can use a VW. And so this is the blurb. This is like, quite often life is disappointing, isn't it? It doesn't live up to expectations. And so they advertise that it's magical. It's 800 years old. It's steeped in profound history, as opposed to history, profound history. And it says, if you're dreaming of a wedding that exudes rustic elegance while maintaining a warm, intimate ambiance, this is the extraordinary venue where timeless dreams come true. And so that didn't really happen, did it? And so if we go on to the next slide, is that I'm going to call this bit damages for wedding distress. And so it's always good to do a bit of law. So we would, in a real situation, we would have asked the client more questions to get our facts sorted out. We wouldn't ask the other side. We would ask the client, our client, what they think the other side would say. And then it's up to them, if we make a claim, for them to defend it. I mean, that's what legal disputes are all about. And so in a case like this, what ultimately, if we can go back to your chats, is if you make a claim against someone, what are you seeking? If you could just put that in the chat, it would be very nice. So you're making a claim against someone. What do you want?
Compensation, compensation, compensation.
Exactly. But we use a different word beginning with D.
Remedy, damages.
Damages. Yeah. Contractual disputes is you're saying that I contracted to do this. I paid this money over for these goods or this service, and I didn't receive what I could have reasonably expected to do. And so therefore, the other side, the person who breached the contract, should pay me damages. And so if we go next slide. There are principles about contractual damages. And can everyone read this? Contractual damages are awarded for pecuniary loss. And so what does, in the chat, pecuniary loss mean, right? What might it mean? Somebody says quantifiable. Anyone else?
What does quantifiable mean?
Measurable. That means quantifiable means measurable.
Monetary,
Here we are, monetary, financial.
Yeah. Pecuniary just means money. It means monetary loss. Contractual damages are about financial loss. It's about money. If that's the principle, I'm going to ask now, what could non-pecuniary losses be? So if your loss isn't money, what else could be your loss?
Okay, we've got some good replies here. Health damage, injury and hurt, emotional damage, distress, pain. Yeah, other people saying the same, similar emotional distress.
Absolutely excellent. So to go back at one stage, so we talked a bit about contract and tort. And so the difference between tort, negligence, and contract is the measure of damages is different. In a negligence claim, you can claim for like distress, upset, grief, trauma, health, loss of amenity. In contractual damages, if the principle is that they're just pecuniary, means you can't claim for those. And so that's why in law, the border between what is tort or negligence and what is contract can be contested. And so I'm going to give you, but not bang on too much about some law, okay? Concrete doctrinal law. And so pain and suffering, anxiety and stress, disappointment, this is what these people I think have had, isn't it? Okay, my wedding day was a disappointment to me. Like I say about my children. But
It's a bit stronger than that. It was a wedding crash, wasn't it? Let's
yeah,
face it.
it was a disaster. So go to the next slide. So I'm going to illustrate the principle because in the end, this is what we would do. And so Lord Bingham, who's a famous judge, in this case called Watson Morrow, said, here's the principle. A contract breaker is not generally liable for any distress, frustration, anxiety, displeasure, vexation, tension, or aggravation. You can go on and read it, yes. I mean, he's saying in contract, the contract breaker, even if the result of them breaking the contract has caused all these problems, as a matter of policy, we won't give damages for them. And even more starkly is in this case of Johnson and Gore, Contract breaking is treated as an incident of commercial life. The players in the game are expected to meet it with mental fortitude. Hey,
That's tough.
get over it, client. But, and this is why the law is fantastic, there's always an exception. So I said, Lord Bingham, he just said all this stuff, it's a principle. But then 2 paragraphs later, in What's Tomorrow, he says, but the rule's not absolute. Where the very object of a contract is to provide pleasure, relaxation, peace of mind, or freedom from molestation, damages will be awarded if the fruit of the contract, fantastic language, is not provided. If the law did not cater for this exceptional category, the law would be defective. I'm going to suggest, right? Does anyone agree to me that a wedding contract or contracts around a wedding is their very object is to provide pleasure, relaxation, and something enjoyable? Does anyone agree? Hey, I like people who say yes, exactly to me. And that's what some people have said, as well as absolutely. So our final stage in this is, are there any cases that we could cite that would help us specifically about such a contract? And so I've just sprawled some there. And so there's a famous case, you also did this one about holidays, about a disappointing skiing holiday, where someone that got the whole family together to go skiing, I think it was in Switzerland, and then built the ski resort. And so they paid out like £1,000. And so they were offered £1,000 because they said, that's what your monetary loss is. But they said, hang on, we only go on holiday once every 5 years and we've got all the family together. And so in that case, they accepted this. And in a Scottish case, just to show that our legal research skills are fine, this is the classic example of where the wedding photographer fails to turn up and take the pictures. And so if I think the actual photographer charged at the it's 1971, like years ago, so it was 50 quid. And so just said, here's 50 quid. But the people said, no, but that's our lifetime of memories gone, isn't it? We're meant to have albums and photographs and it should show everyone. And so it was accepted. And so ever since 1971, it's now become standard practice in a case like this, where you could say the absolute upset and distress caused is a way of adding to the claim. And so we would take her instructions about the upset and the distress, and we would pile all this on. And so thank you for listening for me going on. That is an example of a case. And if there's any way of keeping in contact, I'm more than happy to say, when I've spoken to the person, this is what she decided to do or not do. Or come to Kent Law School, come to the Law Clinic, and you can ask me at the end of September about it. And so I want you to get involved with the Law Clinic if you come here. So I'd like to hand over about ways of getting involved.
Okay, so there are various ways that as a student you can get involved in the Law Clinic. Some of those are, most of those are sort of co-curricular, something you do which is completely voluntary. And the first one there, I'll ask Meg to say something about. We have a 5-week volunteering programme. So Meg, do you want to say a little bit about that briefly?
Yeah, so just quickly, this is the 5-week volunteering program badge, which you would get upon completion. And to basically summarize it, it would be similar to what we've just kind of done here, but you would do it in a group of 4 to 5 students, and you'd look at an inquiry, the same as you saw in the beginning, and you'd come up, you'd find what information you have, what information is missing, and then come up with questions to get the extra information, and then eventually call the client to get that. And that's essentially it, with some legal drafting and some legal research in the mix as well.
Can I just confirm they will get to call the client?
They will get to call the client. which is the most important part.
Great, and
No.
identify what information we need. So in a group, discuss that and really do, do some really important work to try and work out what the problem is and to help the solicitors give a bit of advice in as many cases as we can.
And it's a great opportunity for first years to take their first step in the law clinic.
Yeah, and I know we can't keep people too much longer, so just briefly, a few other ways that you can get involved in the clinic. Throughout each term, we have evening advice sessions every Monday evening, and we have a brilliant group of volunteers who are practicing lawyers, solicitors and barristers, who help us out with these evening advice sessions, so that we have 3 advice sessions running on those evenings, and the advisors will see people, 3 or 4 clients during a 2-hour period. And as students, it's brilliant because you get to sit in those advice sessions and you learn an awful lot from seeing how a professional, experienced lawyer deals with clients and gives advice very efficiently, very sensitively and effectively. So that is a brilliant opportunity to sort of see how things work in practice. We have action groups where you can choose a particular area of law that you're interested in. For example, we have immigration, housing, welfare benefits, family action groups, where they do different things, but quite often discussing cases in a bit more, particular cases in a bit more depth. We have a clinic hub where all law students are welcome to come every week, where we talk about cases that we're dealing with in the clinic, any activities and projects that are going on. It's a really helpful, friendly environment. And so we invite you to come along to that. And last but not least, in your 3rd year, you can get involved in all these things in the 1st and 2nd years, and indeed 3rd years, but also there's a clinical option module that you can choose to do as part of your law degree, where you work more intensively for a whole term in the clinic with a small group of students and a supervisor, where you're doing in-depth casework, and through that you it's brilliant in lots of ways. Some students say it's transformative because it brings together the knowledge that they've gained from their studies, the opportunity to make a tangible difference and to help people resolve a serious legal issue. But you also develop your legal skills and get experience of what it's like to be a lawyer. And so, you know, that's something that you might want to think about doing in your 3rd year. So we'd better wrap up. Graham, I don't know whether you want to say any final words, but we certainly want to thank you all for coming today. And Graham?
Again, I like to say thank you for sticking with us and thank you for participating. And this is, I think it was like Law in Action, because we were quite active on a hot day. And so if it's interesting to combine actual law in books, what we're learning, with real life and see where the 2 things meet or they don't meet, then we would love to work with you.
And we do have fun. We forgot the social side of the clinic.
Yeah. There is a social aspect. I just wanted to quickly answer one of the questions. Yes, you can still volunteer if you are in the foundation year and postgrad as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Anyone who's run for law school is fine to come in. There's always work to do in the garden of law. I think we'll say goodbye now.
Thank you. We need that music again, which, by the way, people loved.